We'll be following our schedule, and today we'll be going over some an introduction to data structures. Okay, so okay, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to go over is comments. So comments in Python are really simple. They're just lines of code that don't do anything. They're mainly there just for readability. But comments are really, really important, especially when you're working with programming professionally. So like just like writing good comments can get you into a job like, you know, your Amazon, right? Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud. So comments are really, really important. Try to keep that in mind the next time you go to maybe a coding interview or something like that. So basically in Python, to write a comment, we use a hash for a single line comment. And then there's really no way to make a official multi-line comment in Python. So what we use is we just make a string, a multi-line string, which if you remember from our last session, you can make that using 3 apostrophes next to each other like this. And so even though it's not an official comment, it's a string that's just there, so it doesn't do anything. So since it doesn't do anything, it pretty much functions as a comment. I'll demonstrate that using my, so hopefully you are all able to download Python through the instructions that were sent in the last email. So hopefully you downloaded Python a version greater than Python 3.6, 3.6 or greater. 3.7 would also work. So for comment, what we do is we just, for single line comment, we do something like this, and I'll say this is a comment. So that's how you write a comment. It won't do anything. This is just there, so if someone's reading your program, they'll know what your program is doing. Okay. So there's something else in programming that is also very important. It's known as an IDE. So an example of an IDE would be JGrass, which I have open here. So first of all, is everyone able to see this window that I just opened? Okay, someone says that they're having trouble hearing. Is other people having trouble hearing me? Okay, so people are saying that they're not having trouble hearing. Okay, so we're just going to continue. So this is an IDE right here. This is the JGrass IDE. There are multiple IDEs. We'll get into how to download an IDE later. But just for our purposes, an IDE is just a place where you can write programs of different languages. You can't see it. So you can't see this screen where I have open right now, JGrass. Okay, so people are saying they can't see it. I'll just. Okay, can people see it now? Okay, people are saying they can see it now. Okay. So so before, when I was explaining about comments, I just typed in a 1-line comment here in my Python command line, CLI, and this is just a 1-line comment. I can also make a multi-line comment by doing 3 apostrophes, and then I can say this is a. So this is now I have a multi-line comment, and you can see the /n, which if you remember before, that's how you go to the next line when you're printing a string. So if I wanted to print a string and say like hello world, but let's say I want both of these words to be on different lines. So in between I do a /n like that. It's not like the normal slash that you might be used to like this, but this is on the other slash, and on my computer it's above the return key, so it's probably the same for you. Anyway, that's how you make a multi-line string. So this will print out hello and world on different lines. Okay, so anyway, let's go back to the IDE that I was talking about before. So here I have my IDE, which is called JGrass, And with JGrasp, I can make programs in Python or Java because I have Java installed on this computer as well. If you get into programming, you can use lots of other programming languages as well. So basically, what you do is you write a Python script. This is Java code. So, but for a Python script, you actually have a lot of flexibility when it comes to using one. So if you have Python installed, you can go somewhere like a notepad, right? And then I can type in x equals, let's say x equals 100, and then print x. Okay, so I'm just going to save that, and I'll save it in my downloads. I'll say something like, I don't know, this is session 2, so I'll just type in session 2. Okay, and then now what you can do to run that program that you just wrote is now I can go to my notepad, or no, not notepad, sorry. I can go to my command prompt, which you can do by typing in, if you're using a Windows computer. Well, first of all, how many people here are using a Windows and how many people here are using a Mac? And then how many people here are using something else? Type it in the chat, what you're using. Okay, so most people are using Windows. Some people are using a Mac. Some people are using Chrome OS. So to open the command prompt on a Windows computer, you can just go here and type in command prompt, or like this. If you're using a Mac, go to Spotlight Search, which is how you search for your apps, and then type in terminal. So like that. And both of those, just keep in mind that both of those are really pretty much the same thing. For as far as we're concerned. For Linux, I think it's also called terminal. I'm not 100% sure, but hopefully you'll be able to tell, because now you know what a CLI looks like. But anyways, I'll go to my command prompt. Well, first of all, I'll change the location of this file that we just made. So right now it was in my downloads. I'm gonna cut this and paste it in my C drive. So I'll just paste it right here. And now you can see it's all the way at the bottom. So I'm gonna go to my command prompt, and then I can type in cd, which stands for change directory. And basically what this does is, well, this is what you would do if you, this is what you'd use to navigate to that file or that folder. So let's say cd ... is how you'd go back one folder. So before I was in users/sameu, and then I typed in cd ... to go up a folder. But now if I type in cd and then sameu, this is how I'd navigate to the folder I was just in. And cd is common in both Windows, Mac, and Linux. So I'm not sure about Chrome OS, but hopefully it's the same. Here, you know what? I'll just open Linux console as well. So if you're using, which should be similar to Macs, what people that are using Macs right now are seeing. But if you're using Windows, just pay attention to this side of my screen. Okay, so so on a Mac, or a Linux, I mean, I go to, what is it, c ... And then to view which files I have open or folders, I type in ls on, I type in ls in to list the folders that are available that I can navigate to. And then on a Windows computer, to see where I am, I type in dir, which stands for directory, like that. And it will list all of your folders that you have open. So I have a lot of folders in this particular folder here. So that's why I have a lot of directories. So right now I'm going to type, since I have Python installed, if I typed in Python here, it would open up my Python CLI on my command prompt. And it should be the same here. I'm not sure if I have Python installed on this particular Ubuntu CLI. Yeah, I don't. Anyway, but now that I know that you hopefully have Python installed, you can do Control-Z to exit Python. And then to run that program that we just made, you type in Python, and then you type in the name of that program. So we named it session 2. So this is going to run session 2. Oh, whoops. Or no, what was it called? What did we name it? Oh, right, session2.txt. Yeah, so make sure you type in the file extension. So keep in mind that even though this is a text file, Python is still able to run it. But just by, just for conveniency, people usually make their text files, they usually save them as what we call Python files. So this would be .py instead. So I could go here and then type in .py, and now it's saved as a Python file. So yeah, that's just a standard that most people follow. So now I could, to give you, so this was a pretty boring program, right? But keep in mind that this is actually what a lot of people use. I know that MIT and Harvard, their CS classes use this as well, this format. So just because it's not, it's not JGrasp, an IDE that looks all fancy like this, but keep in mind that you can still run really interesting programs from here as well. So I'll just go to I have an interesting program that I'm sure you guys will like. I'll just open it up real quick. Where is it? All right. Okay. So also another thing, the tab key is what you can use to autocomplete whatever you're typing. So it helps you navigate faster as well. So this is a project I made for my AI class. And so I just follow that notation. I type in Python, and then I type in the name of the file that I'd want to run with the extension like that. And then I'd get my program would hopefully run. Maybe it's a little slow. But anyways, this was a tic-tac-toe program. So, I just play, it would just open a tic-tac-toe window. Okay, anyway, that's how you run Python scripts. I know that a lot of standardized CS classes use IDEs, but we'll get into that later. Also, if you didn't download Python, that's because you didn't want to, that's perfectly fine. There's another site called Collab, Google Collab, which if you have a Gmail account, you should be able to open. You can just find it by Googling collab.research, and it should be the first thing that pops up. And then, so this will open what's called a notebook. And so what a notebook is it's pretty similar to, in terms of you can still write Python programs like this, but it runs on a different server. So that's why you see the connect here. So this connects to a server at Google through Google Cloud, and most people use Colab for things like AI, because you can access all kinds of different, features like runtime, hardware accelerators, GPUs, that kind of thing. But for our purposes, it will just run simple Python as well. Okay, let's get back to the lesson. Okay, so we're going to go over assignment now. So assignments in Python is basically where you write a variable name and then you create some kind of object or some kind of variable value, and then you're just setting that value into the the name of the variable that you're creating. So here I have just a variable, and then this would be the variable name. And variable names in Python, they can have all the lowercase letters, all the uppercase letters, the numbers 0 through 9, and an underscore. But keep in mind that the numbers 0 through 9, you can only use them if they're not the first character. So to give you an idea of what that would look like, just close this. So if I was making a variable like x, I could put a number that's not at the first, that's not the first character here, right? But if I tried to do something like 2x is equal to 10, that wouldn't work because the first character cannot be a number. Okay, and then we also have some helpful operators here as well. So we have plus equals, minus equals, divide equals, times equals, and I think there are some others, but these are the basic ones for you to know. So basically what this does is, so x of 2 right now is equal to 10. So if I did x2 plus equals 10, then this would add 10 to x2. So now if I did x2, this would have 20. So the plus equals is basically the same thing as saying x2 is equal to x2 plus 10, like that. And then the same thing goes for minus equals, divide equals, times equals as well. So did everyone understand everything I just said so far in this class? Type it in the chat. Okay, if nobody says no, I'm just going to continue. Okay, nobody said no, so we're going to continue. So now we're going to go over the way things flow. So in terms of flow, that just means that's dealing with the order that things will happen in Python. So, okay. So first we're going to talk about what's called the range. So range is another class in Python. Remember how we talked about, ints and floats and booleans. So the range is another class. So if I typed in range and 9, and then, so the type of this is type range, like that. So it's its own class here. We'll go over what a class is in a later session. Right now, we're just going to talk about what this range function does. So basically what it does is it makes, what you can do with a range function is you can make sequences of numbers. So right now, this is the sequence of numbers from 0 to 9, but not counting 9. So 0 to 8. So if I typed in just range of 9, this defaults to 0 to 9, but not counting 9. So if I typed in range of 1, 9, then this would be the range of starting from 1 all the way, but not counting number 9. Okay, so, and range also has some useful functions that you can use too. So if I wanted to add all the numbers that are between, that are from 1 to 8, right? Then I could do this. Remember that we do not count the last number, the second number in the range function. So this would add up all the numbers from 1 to 8, and then it would print out the result, which is 36. So you can see that this would be kind of helpful when you're programming something. But there's this, you can also add a third number in as well. So what this third number would do is it would add like the count, the increments for this. So if I added 2, then this would count from 1 to 9 in steps of 2. So to give you an idea of what that would look like is, type it here. So we'd have 1, and then we'd add 2 to 1, which would be 3, and then add 2 to that, 5, and then add 2 to that, so 7. And then once we hit 9, we're not going to count 9, so yeah. So this would just be 1, 3, 5, and 7. Okay, so now we're going to continue. We're going to talk about what you'd use this range function for later. But anyway, now our next thing we're going to talk about is ifs. So an if statement is basically, if this is true, then we're going to do this. Else, if this is true, we're going to do this. Else, we're going to do this. So right now, don't worry about this. Just worry about if and else. So basically, to write an if statement, you'd say if, and then you'd write some kind of value that would give a Boolean. So if this Boolean right here is true, then we're going to do this line. Python will run this line. And keep in mind that since Python uses, remember I said that we use a structure of space. So if this space was not there, then we'd have an error. So it's important to have everything neat and clean like this. So, and remember that indent at the beginning. So we're gonna run program in Python here. So if, and then let's say we're making a variable called x, and x is 0. So let's say if x is greater than 0, then if x is greater than 0, we're going to print x, or we're going to print, how about we say x is positive. And then if x is less than 0, we'll say x is negative. And then let's say if x is equal to 0, then how about we print out, let's say that x is 0. Okay. So if I ran this program, what do you think we'd print out? Type in the chat. This should be easy. It should take like 1 second. Okay, so only one person responded, but they responded right. So yes, this will print out x is 0. So to run it, I'm going to save this file real quick. Just call it. And yes, it's going to print out x is 0. But to print out x is 0, it's going to pass through this. So let's say that if this was also x is equal to 0, what do you think it would print out now? Type it in the chat. Okay, so nobody responded. Well, right now it's going to print out. So what Python will do is we'll go look at this line first. It will say, okay, so we're assigning the value 0 to x. And then we'll go to the next line, and it's going to say, okay, so it's x equal to 0, and x is equal to 0 because 0 is x. So we're going to print out x is positive. And then next, Python will look at this line, and it will say, okay, so is x less than 0? X is not less than 0, so we're just going to skip this whole thing. And then we'll go to this line, and it will say, is x equal to 0? And x is equal to 0. This is true. So we'll print out x is 0. So basically, we're going to print out this line and this line. So if I ran that, that's what we do. Okay. So basically, what I said before is this would be something like. So what if and else does? Well, I'll make this an else, and I'll make this an else. So what do you think this would do now? Just guess if you don't know. I want to see more people participate. Okay, you know what, let's get rid of this because else's, keep in mind that for else, you don't put a Boolean value there. So right now it's just going to print out. So what Python will look at in this sequence is it will first do this. Is x, we're going to assign 0 to x, and then we'll say, okay, is x equal to 0? X is equal to 0, so we're going to print out x is positive, and then we're done. That's the entire program. So once it finds something that's true, it's just going to carry out whatever's in the indent. We're not even going to look at this. So if I said x is equal to 0 here, and then ran that, we'd still only print out the first line. We just say, is x equal to 0? If x is equal to 0, we're going to print out this, and then we're done. We're not even going to look at the elif or the else or anything like that. So basically, the whole point of the else function is to say, if this was false and this was false, then just do this. That's what Python will do. Okay, so are there any questions about this? There are no stupid questions. So if you're not sure about something, just ask it. Okay, I'm not getting any questions. So if you're still typing a question, then just finish typing it and then I'll read it. So we can also do this in one line as well, especially if you're trying to change the value of something. So here, this is our variable name, and we're going to say this variable name will be this if this Boolean is true, else the variable will be set to this. So we have two variables in this line here, sign and the variable num. So what this line of code will do is it will say, okay, so if the variable num has a greater or equal to value than as to 0, then sign will be positive. If it doesn't, then this variable sign will be set to negative, the string negative. Okay, let's continue. So in Python, we also have what's called a break. So this should have two equal signs. So if x is equal to this string, then we're going to exit what would be an outer loop. So if we had a loop, which is what we'll go over later, and we wanted to exit the loop, we'd use what's called a break. And to do that, all you do is just type in break. But we'll go over that later. And then what this word pass does is it just does nothing. So let's say you're using, let's say you're doing something, or if you're in some kind of formal environment like a classroom and your teacher's giving you assignments, or sometimes if you're working with robotics or something like that, and you just want a line to do nothing. This will make more sense later, I promise. Then just to make the file compile, you use what's called a pass. And then next we're going to go over try except. So what try except does is it will first try to run this. Python will first run this. But if this has an error inside, then we will do what's in the except. And then the word finally, it will just run the code that's regardless of what this is. Okay, so just to give you an idea of how that would look like, I'll just copy and paste this. And then let's say that y is equal to 0. And then we're gonna print this. Why is this? So another useful thing about using an IDE is that whenever you're dealing with some certain controls, it will highlight the words in different colors. So as you can see, it will highlight strings. It will change the color of strings to green, and then for the color of some of the keywords, it will make them purple. So that's just another useful thing to keep in mind. So right now I set y to 0, and then, so first what Python would do is, okay, y is equal to 0. So then it sees the word try. We're going to try to run this. And so we're going to try to print out x divided by 0, but x is not defined in this program at all. So this has an error inside. So we don't even print that out. We don't even say that there's an error inside. We just go to accept, and then we're going to say, and then we're going to print out error. So that's why we printed out the word error here. And then we printed out exiting, because regardless of what this is, what this does, we're gonna run this line of code. So are there any questions on try, except, finally? Okay, there are no questions, so we're gonna move on. So now we're going to talk about loops. So what is a loop? A loop is some kind of, when you write programs, and let's say you wanted to do something like, maybe you wanted to print out 100 lines of a string. But if I wanted to print out 100 lines of a string, then that would be really that would be a really long program, right? So what a loop does is, a loop would just repeat a certain, a few lines of code, so that you can make, you can do more just with writing less. So you'll see how that works in a second. So first up, we have for loops. So for loops are written like this. So we say for blank in blank, and then we have our code. So what a loop does is, we set a variable to cycle through a type of sequence. So remember, we said that a range is a sequence. So who can tell me what numbers are in this sequence here? Okay, so some people said 0 through 9. Some people said other things. So this is not the alphabet. This is going to have the numbers between from 0 to 9. We're going to start. Remember that when I type in range, it's always going to default to 0, 10. So if I typed in range in parentheses 10, then this would be the same thing as typing in this. Okay, so this is going to go from 0 to 10, but not including 10. So this is going to be from 0 to 9, really. And then I can also increment it if I did something like, let's say I did something like 2. So then we're going to count by 2s. And so anyways, that's how the range function would work for a for loop. So now let's see how that would work in action. So let's say for, and then we can make a variable name. This can be anything. So I'll just say for I, because that's common practice. And then we say in, and then range. And then we can say something like 10. And then we add a colon, because that's what we do in these kind of control structures in Python. we add a colon, and then we indent our next line whenever we're typing in a for loop or any kind of loop really, or an if statement. So for control structures essentially. And then we type in the Python code that we want to run in this certain number of times. So for I in range 10, this is pretty easy to read as well. So let's say I'm printing out, I wanted to print the letter X 10 times. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but let's say I wanted to do that. And it would print out X 10 times. So keep in mind that we can also, we can also access this variable I here to see what's actually going on. So let's print out I'll just print out I. So as you can see, we're going from 0 to 9. And so let's say I wanted to count from 1 to 11. Let's say I wanted to print out the numbers from 1 to 10. How would I do that? What would I type in for this piece of code? Okay, so for this, what I would do is I would type in range parentheses and then 1 comma 11, because remember we're not counting the second number. So what this will do, and then if I said print I like that, I'll get the numbers from 1 through 10. And now let's try the increment. So if I wanted to count by 2s, the same thing applies. And we're starting from 1, so that's why we're getting odd numbers here. And so, yeah. But another thing worth noting is I cannot change the value of I while I'm in a loop. So let's say I wanted to say I is equal to 10 or something. And then I try to print out I. So can anyone guess what this would do? Okay, so no one. So anyways, let's see what this would do. This would print out 10 times because we're just getting 10 times because for I in range 1 through 11, we're setting I is equal to 10, and then we're printing out I. So we're going to print out 10. But then in the next one, how a for loop would work is instead of keeping I as 10, we now set I equals to the next number in this sequence. So now I is actually equal to 2. And then in this line, we're saying I is equal to 10. And then we're printing out the value of I again. So that's why we get a 10 again. And then that just repeats 10 times. So yeah, it's a little confusing. But this is just how a for loop would work. In Java, it works differently. But we're not going to get into that right now for sake of because I know that this is kind of a lot in its own right. So let's say I wanted to do something like, let's say I wanted to count by 2s, right? So let's say I say, let's say we wanted to add up the numbers from 1 to 100. So, you know, if you know anything about Gauss, you'd probably be able to do this in like 10 seconds. But let's say we wanted to write a program about that calculates all the sum of the numbers between 1 and 100, from 1 to 100. So let's say, so how we do this is we make a variable to store the sum. I'll just call this sum. And then we could make a program that does this. So for I in range, and then I'll say 1 comma 101, because remember we're not counting the second number in our sum. So this would be the range from 1 to 100. and then I'd say sum plus equals I. And then I'm just going to print out the sum. So you can see how we're adding while the program's running. And so what this does is, remember, what plus equals says is we're just adding the number that I is, and then we're adding that number to the value of sum. And then this just repeats, and we're printing out the sum every single time. So 1, and then 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 plus 3 is 6, 6 plus 4 is 10, and so on, until we get all the way to, 5,050. So if you recall, there's also a shorthand way of doing this in just one line. Can anyone type in what it is? I want to see if you, how well you're paying attention. I mentioned this earlier. I'll give you a hint. It was on, it has something to do with this slide. So type in, how would I calculate the sum of the numbers 1 through 100 in Python using this range function? Okay, so no one remembered, but anyways, remember we're just using the sum function here. And what this does is, so I can say sum of range 1, 101, and this will just sum the numbers between 1 and 100. So weird. Didn't I use it? Did I make a typo? Okay, wait, this is kind of weird. As you can see, I did type it in here. Maybe I made a typo or something. But anyways, this is how you could sum the numbers from in a range, like that. Okay, and then you can also, get creative with your patterns here. As you can see, when we sum the range of 1, 9, 2, counting from 1 to 8 in twos, we got 16. So anyways, that's just some useful functions for you to know. And then keep in mind, this also works for all sequences. So a string is a sequence of characters, if you remember from last class. So if I wanted to print, no, I'll just copy and paste it. Oh, right. Remember, you have to indent, and the indent didn't come out properly here. So I'll just. So what this would do is this would print out all the numbers or all the letters from A to Z, like that. And then lists are also sequences. So if I said, let's say I made this a list by doing this, and all of these functions, these will come into your memory by out of habit. So if you take the quizzes that we're sending out and you watch all the sessions and you try to earn that certificate that we're going to give you, then hopefully all of this will come by memory, and you won't even have to think twice before doing something like this. So now, as you can see, I made this a list. To give you an idea of what a list looks like again, in case you forgot from last class, a list is just where we have a bracket, and then we have different types of data throughout our list. Okay, so while we have for loops, we also have what's called a while loop. And what a while loop is, it's pretty similar to a for loop. You can pretty much do anything that you can do in a for loop with a while loop as well. But while loops, what they do is there's a Boolean, and while this Boolean is true, we're going to exit some code. or execute some code. And then until that Boolean is false, and we're checking that Boolean that it's false, that's when we break out. So remember, a break is how we break out of loops as well. So if this is true, this loop will continue running forever until something happens for this to break out. So in case you didn't understand what this is saying, that's the reference for that. So here we're saying, well, x is greater than 1, we're printing out x, and then we're decreasing x by 1 every single time. So to give you an idea of how that would look like, I'll type in while, and then 1, like that, and then, so we're going to print out x, and then we're going to say x minus equals 1. Oh, we have to define x, so let's say x is equal to 10, and now let's do all of that again, like that. So this is the program that we just wrote, small little thing. And so 10 versus what Python does is it says, okay, so x is equal to 10. Is 10 greater than 1? Yes, it is. So we're going to print 10 and then lower it by 1. And then we're going to restart again, and is 9 greater by 1? Because x is now equal to 9. We print out 9, and then we decrement that by 1. And then we start all over again. So x is now 8, and we just repeat that. So that's the while loop. So did everyone understand what is a for loop and a while loop, and how to write one in Python? If you don't understand something, just type it in the chat. So nobody responded saying they didn't understand anything, so we're just going to move on. Okay, so now, in case you missed the else, okay, someone said they had a question. So the difference between the loops, there isn't really a difference between the loops. That's why we have this joke right here. The main thing you need to, I guess the main thing that differentiates them is in a for loop, we use the word for, and then we're also cycling through a sequence. And then in a while loop, we have a Boolean value here. And if this Boolean is true, that's when the while loop runs. And until the Boolean is false, the while loop will just keep on running forever. So to demonstrate that, I can say while and then true. So if I said while true, then this is always going to run forever. And if I said print, maybe like x or something, then this will just print x forever, and it's never going to stop. This will be an infinite loop. And so that's, in case you're wondering if there is such thing as an infinite loop, yes, there is. I can stop this in a command prompt by clicking here like this. So now this paused the program. And remember, to stop any kind of Python program, what you do is you type in Control-C, like that, and this will stop that program that you were running before. So now it's called a keyboard interrupt, in case you were wondering. Anyway, where can I see the week 1 lesson? We sent it out in an email. If you didn't get the email, then just email us asking for the recording. So yeah. And while and for loops also have what's called an else. So remember, we have an else and an if statement. So if this is true, we do this, else this. So while loops and for loops also have an else statement as well. So what their else statement does is, after the loop has finished, we will after this loop has finished, we will no matter what happens, we're going to execute what's in the else statement. And then what the word continue does is this will just go to the next iteration of the loop. So let's say I was doing for I in range 0,9, right? And then I was going to say continue. Then I'm going to print out I. Can anyone guess what this program will do that I just typed in? So this. So nobody guessed what this will do? No, this is not an infinite loop. This, what this will do is, so the continue function, this will do nothing, absolutely nothing, because, so this is how Python will look at it. So for I in range 0 through 9, so this is the range 0 to 8, actually, because remember, I is going to cycle from the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we're going to go to the next line here, which is continue. And remember, continue, what that does is this just goes to the next iteration of the loop. So we're just going to ignore everything that's in the loop that's after the word continue, and we're going to restart the loop. So then Python's going to say, okay, for I in range 0 through 9, again, now I is 1, continue, so we're just going to skip everything. For I in range 0 through 9, now I is 3 or 2, continue, and then I is 3, and then continue. You know, it's just not going to go to this. It's never going to get this line. Sorry, I was just answering someone's question that they asked. Okay. So someone asked what our email was. Our email, you know what, I'll just put it here so everyone can see. This is our email. If you have questions or anything about quizzes or anything, just email your question here. So what is the purpose of print here? So this line will never execute. Python will never run this line here because of this continue that we just wrote. So what the continue does is it will just skip everything that comes in the loop that's below the word continue. So we're just going to continue with the loop. Don't worry about anything else. So you can imagine the loop is just trying to cycle from the number 0 to 8. And then this line here just saying, no, don't worry about anything else. Just continue with the loop. So then the loop will say, OK, let's not do this line here. We're just going to continue running. So if I help you understand that, I'll say print the letter X. And then I'll say continue. And then I'll say print I. So now what this would do is, can anyone guess what this program here would do? What would print out? Okay, so yes, we have some correct answers. What this will do is this will print out X 8 times. We're never going to print out I. Not that we use the word continue. Okay, so let's continue with this. So what else? What the other thing we have is we also have input in Python. So let's say you're writing let's say you work for Google, right? And you want to write a chatbot, an AI chatbot. And so what you do is you could create a GUI, which we'll talk about what that is later. But what you'd also do, especially if you've seen Google's latest chatbot, I forgot its name, but how they're taking in input, like user input, is they prompt the user by saying something like, hello, right? And so what this would do is you can take a value from the user. So let's say I'm typing hello, what is your name? Right. So what this is going to do is it's going to print out hello, what is your name? And then keep in mind that, and if you look closely, the cursor is still there. So I'm going to type in my name. And so now if I type in X, my name is stored in the value X. So that's what input does. Hopefully that should be straightforward. So did anyone not understand what? Did everyone understand this? So nobody's saying no, so we're just going to continue. And you can get creative now. So let's say I was making let's say I want to make this a program. And then now we can do something like print hello, and then that. So what this would do is this would, whoops, space. It'd say hello, what is your name? And then you could type in your name, and then it will just say hello, and then your name. So anyways, that's how, that's what they use when they're making chatbots, like Alexa or Siri. Anyways, let's continue. So this is what might be the most important part of if you're working in a developer job or any kind of job where you're programming. So this is what's called algorithm complexity. And so what we do in algorithm complexity is we have something called big O notation. So what big O notation does is it basically determines the efficiency of your program. So how efficient is your program? So O of 1 means that your program will run in the same time every single time you run it. And what O of n says is your program will run in different times depending on like the value or something that depending on something else. So to give you an idea of what that is okay. If I said for I in range 10, and then said print the letter X, so this will just print out X 10 times, or yeah, X 10 times, and so no matter what, how many times I run it, or no matter what I do, this will run in the same time my computer will take the same amount of time to run this program every time I run it. So this would be O of 1. It's the best case in programming because this is the fastest case. You always know how fast your program will run. It will run the same in the same amount of speed every single time. And then O of n, this depends on some other variable that you add in your program. So let's say I was going to do something like x equals, or let's say, no, I'll write this here. So I'll say type in a number. And if I'm taking in a value that is a number, then I have to use this int here because I'm getting in an int, and then parentheses around this. So now x will be an int, and then now we're going to say for x in range, or no, not x in range, for I in range, and then x, and we're going to print, I don't know, let's print I. Okay, so what this will do is this program will say type in a number, and let's say we type in like, I don't know, 5, then this will print the numbers from 0 to 4. Or how about we do something like, let's say x plus 1, 1 comma x plus 1. So now, can someone tell me what this program will do now? So what will this program that I just typed in do? So we actually don't know what it will do because it all depends on the number the user types in, right? So it depends on which number I type in, and nobody knows which number I'm going to type in, right? We just don't know. So that's why this would be an O of n efficient program, because we don't know what n is. It depends on the efficiency of the program depends on what the value of n is. So, and I'm the one that chooses what n is because I am the one running this program and I'm the one typing this in. So let's say I wanted to make it 100. This will take, so for this program to run, it will take a little bit longer than it would take like, if I typed in 3, right? This is a lot faster. But it all depends on what, it all depends on what I type in, right? So it could take a really long time if I typed in a really huge number versus if I typed in a much smaller number. So anyway, so that's big O notation. There are more cases out there, but for our purposes right now, these are the 2 cases that you need to know. And now we're going to go over, and now another recommended step is to download an IDE. So I was just wondering how many people actually looked at the instructions I sent in the last email and followed them to download Python. Type in the chat, type in a 1 in the chat if you did that. Okay, so we have a bunch of people that did download Python. So if you already downloaded Python, that's good for you. I'd also recommend downloading an IDE of some sort. So the IDE that I have is JGrasp, and JGrasp is really good for beginners because it also has a debug function, but I don't think we have enough time to go over what that does. And it's really simple and straightforward, especially when you're just starting out. Another IDE that's out there is Pycharm. I also have that too. It's a much more complicated IDE that's out there. So first of all, IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. It's where you're programming and debugging things like JGrasp here. I can debug this program if it was long and complicated. Like that tic-tac-toe program I showed earlier, that was a little complicated. So if I wanted to debug that, I just press debug and then I do some other things. So JGrasp is really good for starting out. Yes, you do need a computer for IDE. I think they also have online IDEs as well, but those are typically not as good. And then another IDE is, so Pycharm is another IDE, but I wouldn't recommend downloading it, especially if you're just starting out. It takes up a lot of space and it's very feature heavy as well. So unless you're doing some building an app or something, or if you're using Python, or if you need Pycharm for your office or something like that, I wouldn't recommend downloading it. And then Visual Studio Code, this is a product by Microsoft. I think I have it, but yeah, I do have it here. It's also called VS Code. It's also a pretty useful IDE too. I haven't used it as much as I've used JGrasp, so I can't really say much about that. And then we also have text editors. So at the beginning of the session, I used a notepad to run a simple Python program. You can use a notepad. They also have some, so the notepad is a text editor, and it's on most machines by default. So you don't even need to download an IDE if if you know you're not gonna get into Python, you can use a simple notepad as well. They also have WordPad, and Atom is a really useful text editor too. I'm not gonna go into that for the sake of time, but these are just some useful tools to use if you want to make Python programs in the future. And if you don't want to use Python, you can also use Google Colab, which as I said before, you can run Python programs on here as well. But what this does is it's in the form of a notebook. So this would run in a similar way to how my command prompt would run over here. My CLI, Python CLI, which if you downloaded Python, you should already have this. Okay, so now that we're done with that, I also wanted to talk about Kickstart, Google Kickstart. So the next Google Kickstart competition is going to be on July 12th, which is in about a month from now. So, and it's, as you can see, this is by Google, and it's worth trying out, especially for all of you, because the prize is a pretty great prize. The prize for winning this competition, or not even for winning, just for doing well. Like if you get a good score in this competition, then Google will call you and give you an interview, or that's what I'm told. So this is a great competition worth checking out, but sometimes the times don't match up. Like it's at 500 hours UTC, but since I live in Virginia, the USA, this would be at 1 a.m. for me, and 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. So I probably wouldn't do this because of the uncomfortable timing. But I know that our class is very international, so if this timing does work out for you, then by all means, please attempt it. Okay, so for our first exercise, we're going to try this problem out here. So this is an example of what you might see in this competition. So open up Google Colab if you haven't downloaded Python. If you have downloaded Python, then you can try using your Python command prompts, Python CLI, like this thing. And then try to write a program that can solve this question, and then type it in the chat. I'll give about 5 minutes. This is the easiest problem on this website called Project Euler. So hopefully it shouldn't take too long. Anyways, let's take 5 minutes as a break for you to try to attempt that. And then once you finish, type in your answer in the chat. And I'm going to change the chat so everyone can see everyone else's response. So the first person that gets it correct, then we'll all see your answers. So yeah, just go ahead and take the next 5 minutes to try to solve this problem right here. Okay, so there's only 1 minute left if we follow that time scheme, and we have a couple of answers, but I don't think any of them are right so far. So to help you out, I'm gonna keep this open. Maybe I'll try to. So this was the program I made a long time ago when I was attempting this problem, and I used Java. As you can see, it's pretty similar to Python. Like you can see I'm making an int here, I'm making an int here, I'm using a while loop here. Maybe you don't know what this notation is, but hopefully you can figure that out. I'm using an if statement here, and then I'm printing out the answer here. And this does work. I have confirmed it before. So hopefully while you're making your program, try to look at this to help you out. We'll give it another 2 minutes for you to make your Python program. Okay, so it's been a while. I don't think anyone typed in the correct answer. Just gonna run this program to show you. The answer was 233,168. I know that we're international, so maybe you read numbers in a different format. But anyways, this number here is the answer. In case you don't believe me, I actually solved this before. I have an account on this as well. I'll just sign in, and sure enough, the answer is that, and I had completed it. So if you didn't answer it, that's okay. I'll walk through. You know what? Let's just to end off. Let's walk through how you answer this problem. Okay, so first we'd list all the natural numbers below 10 that are multiples of 3 or 5. We get 3, 5, 6, and 9, and then the sum of these multiples is 23. And we want to find the sum of all the multiples of 3 or 5 that are below 1,000. So how we do this is, how about we say, you know, there are multiple ways to go about this problem. So this one way isn't the only way. You might have used a different way. So let's create a function called sum, and let's say sum is equal to 0. And then so while or let's create a variable to count. So let's say count is equal to 1, and then so while count is less than 1000, we will reduce count by 1. Okay, so count, or no, I mean, sorry, we'll increase count by 1. Okay. So does everyone understand what this does? We have this variable count, and until count is 1000, it will just keep on increasing by 1. So what we're going to do next is we're going to add an if statement here. So if the value of count is how about we say if it is a multiple. So to find out if something's a multiple, remember we have this percent sign, which is also what we use as a modulo, sorry. So what this says is, so remember in math, that what a modulo does is it says if something is a multiple of something, then the modulo of both of those things will be 0. So what this says is if we divide count by something else, then this will give us the remainder. If we say count percent sign, and you know, I'll say 3, because we want to know if it's a multiple of 3. And then if 3 is a multiple of count, can anyone tell me what this would equal to? So if 3 is a multiple of count, yes, it will be 0. Okay. So if 3 is a multiple of count, then this will be 0. Or, right? Because we want to know if it's a multiple of 3 or 5. So let's say count if it's a multiple of 5. If this is also equal, or if this is equal to 0, I'll put this in parentheses to maybe help you out, help you in reading this. So now we're able to do something if this or this is true, right? And we want to find the sum of all the multiples of 3 or 5 below 1000. So now for this, let's just increment sum plus equals, sum plus equals count. And then, so what this will do is this will just print out the sum of everything that is a multiple of 3 or everything that's a multiple of 5. So now I'm going to print out the sum of this, and then we're going to stop when we reach 1000. So does everyone understand how this program would work? Type in, so there are no responses if everyone, so if you understood it, how about this? If you did not understand something about this program, type in no. Okay, so someone said not completely. So which part are you not sure about? Tell me by which line number. So here there are the line numbers. Okay, so line 5. So remember that whenever I use the percent sign in Python, this is the same thing as a modulo. So what this does is, you know what, I'll open Paint. So let's say I have, 2 numbers, right? So let's say I have the number 2 and I have the number, let's say, I don't know, maybe the number 5. So 2 goes into 5 once, right? So if I had a number line, right? Let's say I have a number line here, and here we have 0, here we have 1, here we have 2, and so on, right? So the number 2 divided by 5, this would be somewhere between 0 and 1. Like, let's say right here. So 2 divided by 5, so 2 goes into 5 once, or no, sorry, 2 goes into 5 twice, So 2, and then we'd have a remainder of 1, because 2 times 2 is 4, but then if we add another 2, we'd get 6. So we'd have what's called a remainder of 1, because 4 only needs 1 to go there, but we're counting in terms of 2. So 2 mod 5, or 5 mod 2, sorry, would be equal to 1. So this basically just gives us the remainder of the two numbers divided by each other. Okay, so does that make sense, or should I explain it again? So did anyone not understand? Does anyone still not understand anything about this? If so, tell me the line number. Going once, going twice, sold. Okay, so everyone does understand this then. So let's run it, see if we get the right answer. Let's see. We got the wrong answer. Oh no. See what went wrong. So strange. What did we get? We got 2, 3, 4, 1, 6, 8. When the answer is 2, 3, 3, 1, 6, 8. Okay. Oh, I think I know what's going on here. So the correct answer, it's asking for the sum of multiples below 1000. But if you see in our program here, this is actually really common. A common mistake among developers is where they'll forget that we actually check this loop. The loop, it repeats every single time. So when count plus 1 here is equal to 1000, we're adding 1000 more to the sum. So an easy fix for this would be to just copy or cut this line, and let's say put it here. Okay, so this hopefully should work. And yes, this does give us the correct answer for this problem, which is 2, 3, 3, 1, 6, 8. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. Did everyone understand that program? Hopefully the next time you see it, you should be able to make it. And you never know, this just might help you get a job at Google someday. So for programs like this. So I did make a small, really short Kahoot for everyone. This is like 6 questions about big O notation. If you remember that, hopefully everyone remembers that. So join, and this will be the last thing for today. Okay, we're gonna wait 10 more seconds so people can join. Okay, we're gonna start, but the game pin will be on the bottom left if you want to join. Okay, so the answer was O of 1. The reason for that is because we're always, this will always run in the same runtime, right? Because we're just going to print once and then print the next time. So if this, it really depends on X or Y, but since X and Y is not defined, we're always going to go here, print error, and then we're going to print exiting. So this will always be the same runtime and it will always be O of 1. So that's why O of 1 is the answer. O of 0, there's no such thing as O of 0. So that's why to those 3 people that answered that. And error, if there was an error here, we just go to the except. So this code does not actually, it still compiles. There isn't really an error here. O of n, this is not O of n because this will always have, just by looking at it, at this part of the code, we know how we know the efficiency of this. It will always run in the same time. Okay, so here are the rankings. Okay, so there was an error here because this is not an actual 10. This 10 is, an annoying 10 that is a string because we have 2 apostrophes. And if you recall, if we have 2 apostrophes around something, it is not an int, it is now a string in Python. So, and the range function, we can only type in numbers here, so more specifically ints. So this has an error. It will not be able to run. Even if it did run, for those people that said O of n, even if this did run, this would not be O of n because it's always going to run 10 times. So 10 times, this will run 10 times, and so you'd think that this would be O of 10, right? Because we're running this 10 times every single time. But there's no such thing as O of 10. There's no such thing as O of any natural number other than 1, because O of 10 in programming terms is the same thing as O of 1, and so is O of 2 and O of 3 and O of 4. All of that is just O of 1 as far as we're concerned. So that's why that was the answer. Okay, so I just said the answer to this, like in literally the last question, when I said that if this was an int, this would be O of 1, and sure enough, the next question just happened to be that. This is O of 1 because we're having 10 is defined here, so hopefully you should have picked that. And again, O of 0 is not a real thing. This is not an error. This has no errors. This will compile, and this will run. And it's not O of n because this is a constant, what we call a constant. This isn't a variable. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so the answer for that one was there is an error. Because again, remember when I said that, whoops, I guess I deleted it. But anyways, X is an input, and input will take in things as a string. So if you wanted to actually take in an input as an int, remember you'd have to say X is equal to int, and then in parentheses input. So and then that's the only time when you could say, so now X is an int, right? So if I said type and then X, now X is an int, but let's say I said, I did this and then did that and then type X, it would be a string. And remember, strings don't work when you put them in the range. And so this has an error. Go to the next question. Okay, so the correct answer for this is also an error, because remember that when we're using a for loop, this has to have an indent, or else it won't compile, it won't run. So if you don't believe me, I'll even do it in front of you. So for I in range, let's say something like 10 or 102 in this case, and then if I said print and then X, then I'd error out because it expected an indent over here. So in Python, you do get what's called an indentation error. Okay, so the correct answer for this was O of n, because what we're putting in here is a variable, and that variable can be, it varies depending on what x is. So this, that's why this is O of n. This is not O of 1, because if it was O of 1, this would have to be a constant here. So then it would always run the same time every single time. It would have the same big O every single time. This would have O of 1 is the best efficiency. This has this isn't the worst efficiency out there, but this certainly isn't the best. Anyway, that's why the correct answer is O of n. This does not have an error. This will compile. This will run. And yeah, so that's why that's the answer. So in third place we have. Second place we have 2. In first place we have. Nice job, guys. So that concludes today's session. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you decide to come next time as well. We'll be going over some. We'll be going over dictionaries next time, so more on data structures. Try to look out for Google Kickstart, which will be starting in approximately a month. So try to study for that, and try to attend these sessions, so so that you'll be able to hopefully do your best on these rounds, these competitions. You can make an account on Project Euler and then do some of these problems for practice. The one we did today was the easiest one on the whole website. So yeah, I guess I'll see you soon. And if you do attend these sessions and try the quizzes that we're going to send by email to everyone later on, then please make sure that you do those. We are grading those quizzes. We'll have we'll try to pick out the students who have the best scores, like the star students, and maybe give them some recognition, of course, if they'd like. And then if you do have solid participation, then you will get a certificate. And if you do all the assignments and everything. So that's it for today. Adios. Goodbye.